Okay. Anybody know what Xero is and what we do? Couple hands. Okay, great. I'll go in and a couple of our staff too. Good. I'm glad you guys know what it is. I'll go into a little bit about Xero because I think it's important context for what we're going to talk about today. But I know this is unSEXY conference and we're B2B sales, so we're talking SaaS, but we probably sell the unsexiest thing you can possibly sell, which is accounting software. But we do everything in our power to make it sexy. That's one of our taglines. We're actually beautiful accounting software. That's what we go to market with. And we spend a ton of time from day one building workflows and usability and design in all the features of our applications. So every single feature we introduce goes through a very rigorous design process. And I think we've seen a lot of our customers like to tell us that we've got some good usability and it is actually beautiful. We compete with QuickBooks, so I'm sure most people are familiar with what QuickBooks does. They own the market space, and we're making a big dent. So I'm here to talk about building a sales team, and we'll go through some of the things and the learnings that I've had over the last little while. But first thing first, if you hire clowns, you'll end up with a circus. So it's pretty straightforward. I mean, a circus is fun, but it's not something that you want to do, and we'll get back to that. But that kind of summarizes a lot of what we'll dive into through some of this presentation. So just a bit on me. I joined the company. We've been going for 7 years now. We started in New Zealand, of all places, on the other side of the planet. And the founder was a serial entrepreneur and built 2 companies prior to Xero. But realized there was a big opportunity with online accounting, cloud-based accounting, where you could access information anywhere, anytime, over your mobile phone, tablet, as well as any web device or any device that you can get an internet connection. So since then, we've been growing and doubling revenues and customers every year. We now have 193,000 paying customers, and the last public release of our financials was $43 million in recurring revenue. So we are a public company, and that's why the notion of obscurity comes up in our tagline. I didn't make that up, but it's tough to come back from that when people tell you your startup is obscure, but maybe that's a good thing. But we actually went public from day one and raised money on the New Zealand Stock Exchange. So the founder raised $15 million, floated 20% of the company, and then since then we've pumped in money from investors in the U.S. and elsewhere and raised about $120 million. So now we do have a market cap. It's actually close to $2 billion. It's just under that now. The share price has come down a little bit. But 400 staff across the globe. And then in the U.S. here in San Francisco, I've got a team of just over 70. So I started 18 months ago, and we've been busy hiring people. And it's a mix of sales and marketing as well as engineering. There's a few other products that we're going to be releasing in the next couple of months. But what I want to talk about today is around the sales team. So I'm assuming many of you are either have a salesperson on your staff or are looking at it. So that's what this presentation is designed. Some insights from me on building a sales team and the things that we've learned. It's pretty straightforward, I think, in terms of, when you start, you really need to understand what your business goals are when you're going to hire that first salesperson or add that next salesperson. So if you're going to go for, market share, which is what most startups and most early stage companies are looking at and driving customers, that makes a lot of sense. You build the product, get customers, keep customers, and make money. We see that all the time. The keeping customers, from what I've seen, is the hard part. But you still need to know what's that key driver for you at this period of time, over the next quarter, 6 months, or a year. And if you're driving market share, that's fine. If it's revenue or it's top-line revenue, you need to understand that and make sure that's what you're going to drive into the compensation plans for the salespeople. And then lastly, profitability. So they're all very different, and you can design compensation plans that adhere to each of these, and you can actually factor in each one of them as well. So it can encompass all 3. But it's really important to just realize or figure out what you're doing over the next couple of months, the next 6 months, the next year, so that you can design that plan appropriately. And then we all want to do this, and I think it comes back to revenue. I think the key metric is revenue. The successful SaaS companies that have sustained and continue to grow are driving revenue, not just customers and not just profitability. So you can raise money if that number keeps going up, and that's what we've seen and that's what we've done. Just so you know, we're not profitable. We haven't made money in the last 7 years, but we keep raising money because we think we're working on something pretty special, and it's a huge global opportunity. Second insight is setting up the appropriate sales structure. So knowing what you've got those business goals and what you're going to drive for. So what kind of team do you want to put in place? And I think there's 4 things that you can look at. You may sell just over the web, and that's fine. You don't need a salesperson if you're selling just over the web. So that is a marketing, product marketing or a marketing person, someone that understands SEO, SEM, understands the funnel, how to optimize the funnel. So you'd hire that. The next in line is telesales. This is pure, dialing for dollars, lots of phone calls, up to 200 phone calls a day. We actually use a telesales agency in our model, but it's not to talk to customers, to sell to them. What we do is we have an event strategy where it's not unlike what Salesforce did when they ramped up their business many moons ago. And then we talk to accounting firms, because we're accounting software, ask them to come to an event and tell them all about what Xero is doing and how it can benefit them, make them more money, make them more profitable, make them more efficient, and help them manage their clients. So that telesales agency is tasked with filling events. So it's just event registration. And we've been doing that across the globe, and it's working very well for us. And we know with our sales model, if we can get 15 to 20 accountants in a room, 25% of those are going to turn into a partner of ours, is what we call them. And then every partner has anywhere between 5 and 500 clients, and that's how we make money. They start bringing on customers. So it's almost a channel for us. Selling to accountants is next to impossible. They're the last people that want to look at cloud-based technology and make change. But there are quite a few. Fortunately, there's 1.5 million in the US, and there's over 500,000 accounting firms. So the market is enormous. And then you've got inside sales. So we also have an inside sales team that is focused on our small businesses. So we've got an interesting model where we sell to small businesses and we also sell to accountants. So on the one side, we've got field sales people, and I'll talk a little about this for the accountant channel. And then for the web sales, we actually have inside sales people. Because accounting software is slightly complex, we're required to explain a little bit about this. If you've got a more simplistic product that doesn't require someone to help them through the purchase process, then you may not need an inside salesperson, but we do. And the way it works is we have unique visitors coming to our website, and trials that sign up, and then our inside sales guys call those trialists, help them through the process, answer any questions, talk about our add-on ecosystem, and then close the sale. On the other side, with the accountant channel, it takes a lot longer. The sales cycle, the sales cycle with a small business could be hours. It's not that hard to convert them to a paying customer. But on the partner side, we've had the largest accounting firm in California, for example, has picked up Xero and is now using that for all their clients. It took us 18 months to get that going. So it takes a little longer for those larger firms. It's also the 30th largest firm in the U.S., so you can imagine it takes time. And then there's somewhere in the middle, and we figured out our sweet spot, which is obviously somewhere in the middle of that. So just on commission plans quickly, so this is kind of just education for those that don't know. It's a base salary and commission. What we see is typically between 50 and 100% of commission. So a sales rep, we're making $50K base, and then 100% of the commission with another $50K in commissionable amount. I'm not going to get into equity. There's different plans and different things you can do depending if you're a public company. We're obviously very different. We give shares to everybody that joins Xero and have a plan for that. And then another important thing is really about onboarding. So if you're in early stage, you don't have a lot of information, you've been going for maybe less than a year or just over a year, it's hard to forecast what your numbers are going to look like. So to mitigate that challenge, setting up some sort of ramp features for your sales reps is important. And what we do is what we call a management by objective document. It's basically for the first month, instead of giving them a target for the first month, because there's a lot of training to go through, we set up a list of objectives and buckets. There's 4 or 5 buckets, and there's objectives in each of those buckets. If they achieve all those objectives, then they achieve their commission, which is paid out at 100%. So it's an easy way to say there's stuff you need to do. It's not directly correlated to driving new customers into the business. And then once you've got that done, we'll pay out the commission depending on if you've achieved those targets. And then after that, what we do is we have a ramp. So knowing that there's time to build into the territory, this is for the accountant side, you need to ramp that up. So we'll have a couple months of ramp, and then you're full quota and ready to go. There's also things that we don't do this, but recoverable and guaranteed draws. So Again, the same premise where you're not really sure exactly what the first year, first 6 months is going to look like. What you can do is pay out your reps a commission, and then you draw that back. So it's not that they're getting paid, so they're not achieving their quota. Then you pay them a minimum amount to keep them so they can actually live and do the things that they need to do. But then once they start achieving their commission, you pull that back. The opposite of that is guaranteed, where you don't actually pull it back. So those are two things that other companies do. I know Salesforce does that. So the other thing we look at, how are we doing for time? Okay. So sorting out a recruit strategy. So for me, you can't spend enough time on this and figuring out what your next hire looks like. You saw the first slide, you hire clowns, you get a circus. So spending the time and figuring out what exactly you want. I actually spend time building that job description. Don't go to the web and pull off, I'm trying to hire a VP of sales and here's a template and then they'll fire that up on the website. I spend time thinking about exactly what you're trying to look for, what are the goals you're trying to solve for, and then filling in the domain expertise, the years of experience, and the sales experience is key. And I can't stress that enough. I think it's been very helpful for us in really understanding what we want. And then you get a profile, and especially if you're going to ramp your sales team, you got to make sure you know what the profile of that optimal salesperson selling into these markets is, because then you can just go after it and continue to hire based on that profile. And you don't have to rely on one recruiter to do that. You can actually start using multiple. So the philosophies here, there's hiring really smart, amazingly talented people, and they'll figure it out. I think there's a few companies in the Valley that do that. And there's hiring people based on experience, previous success, and domain expertise. So at Xero, we're the first bullet, obviously. We just have a bunch of talented and amazingly people, but there's actually not a lot of those. So we have to look and go through the process of understanding, experience and success and all that. In terms of recruiting strategies, so you can do it yourself, obviously with the job boards and LinkedIn, and then leveraging your network makes sense. You can use an on-site recruiter or an outsourced recruiter. And there's two ways that outsourced recruiters work. Either they're on a retained search or they're paid for placement. And pay for placement means they'll just take roughly 20% of whatever that first annual salary on target earnings is. And retained search means that they're only working for you for that specific role. It's typically for roles that are higher up in the organization. And then you sign a contract that no one else can use that or can go after that specific role. So what we do and what we have done is we had an in-house recruiter, contract recruiter, brought her in. And then, my opinion is with recruiters, they all have networks and they all have tactics that they use. And after a little while, they seem to just exhaust those, and it's not as useful to your organization. So we were in a ramp phase, and we've been hiring quickly, so we've tried to figure out the best way to do this. And what we did was used our in-house recruiter as a hub to manage multiple other recruiters that were focused on the sales market. So at any given point, we could have 8 to 10 other recruiters that are working to try and fill these roles, because they're similar roles. And then we bring in these candidates. If they fit the profile, they go through the interview process. And that worked really well for us. Then you're not tied to building a whole in-house team. I know there's several firms that have done this, and I've talked to a few in the Valley. They've got 10 people on staff that are doing recruiting. That seems to work for them, but for us, this seemed to be a good strategy for us, and it did work. So metrics matter. I touched on a little bit of this. So you got the team set up, you define your goals, you started to recruit, so you got to make sure you're on top of the metrics. And if you're a web sale and there's that's all you're doing is web sales, on the right-hand side, those are the basics. I mean, this is obviously what you should be tracking. You probably already all know this. There's a ton of other metrics that have come into this, but unique versions, conversion to trials, conversion to paid, and monitoring that ongoing, understanding what's working, what's not working, and always optimizing. From a sales perspective, it's a little different. It's number of calls, connections to an actual customer on the end of the line, and then the number of closes. And the close ratio is really the important thing, because that's when you can start to tell the productivity of that rep and how they're doing from month to month. Is that improving? And how we work, it's a combination of both, as I've said. We've got web sales that come in, and then we talk to them, and so we're looking at this whole funnel down through to the close, through both, people pay online and close out and pay for the software without touching a sales rep, and others come and touch to sales rep. So these are some more other important SaaS metrics that, once you've got that set up and you understand some of the key things, you start optimizing on your sales process, your web process, you've optimized the website, the conversions continue to improve. As you go along, you start to look at making sure your business model is actually functioning in a way that's sustainable. So you've probably all heard about this. So we've got monthly recurring revenue, so we're selling product on a monthly basis, subscription basis. The churn rate is the customers that you lose every month. Lifetime value of a customer, which will go into the cost to acquire a customer, which is the sales and marketing spend over the number of customers that you acquired, and then the months to recover that CAC is also important. So I'm going to whip through these slides because we're getting close to the end, but basically, go back. So rule of thumb is that your cost to acquire customers, which is sales and marketing expense over your number of customers acquired, obviously needs to be less than your lifetime value of your customers. So I'm not going to go into the details, and we can work through numbers on this. If someone wants to chat about this after, I can work some models in, or work some numbers in to go through it. But rule of thumb is that your LTV should be actually 3 times greater than your CAC. So knowing that, if it's not, there's things you need to tweak in that formula. So maybe we need to reduce churn. The cost to serve has to come down. We got to spend less to acquire customers. You just got to keep iterating until you achieve that. Because if you don't do this, you got to raise more money or you go out of business. That's just the way this works with these SaaS models. So Salesforce and Constant Contact, both public companies, so this information is available. They're 5x their CAC. So their LTV is 5x their CAC. And then recovering CAC in 12 months is really what you're trying to look for on an ongoing basis. So just so I know, there's a number of you that are early stage, seed funded. This stuff is, it's formulaic. You don't want to waste a ton of time in spreadsheets like going over this. It's just, if you could set it up once you get to a stage where it's reasonable and plug in some numbers and do some scenario analysis on where you think you're trending, it's just helpful to know what your business is all about. So it ties into the business model, your pricing and all that. But you got to remember, if you're acquiring customers, you're spending too much money, and they don't make enough money for you, and they're falling and churning, it's not a sustainable business. So we obviously look at that at Xero, and those are the key metrics we abide by. And just because we're in multiple markets, it's very different. Our CAC versus LTV is also different in different markets, but the CAC is very different. And we're in ramp phase, so even in the U.S. right now, it's a bit obscure, using that word again, for us in the U.S. because the numbers are a little inflated because we're spending so much time to ramp. 2 minutes. All right, the last one. So having fun is obviously very important. If you take on a sales team, sales reps, they want to have fun. That's basically what they come to work to do. Some want to lead the pack. Others want to go surfing, like me. I love surfing. Spend time with the family. And money. But the key thing about these slides is really knowing your sales reps individually, and when you set up compensation plans and you really dig into what makes them tick and what's important to them, then you can tie that into how you compensate them, how you reward them, and it makes a huge difference. So those are some of the things that we look at. So closing thoughts, no matter how great of a product you build, it only matters if people buy it. And the last one, if you build it, the people will come. My answer to that is maybe. Odds are going to go up if you got a great sales team to manage it. And I feel like that's the truth. I mean, I know there's some companies here that don't have salespeople. They claim, wow, we don't need salespeople. That's going to work for a very small percentage of B2B sales. And if you increase in complexity in what you're selling, it's very helpful if you build a sales team to make that happen. Yes?
Yeah, I have a quick question for you. So you mentioned something really interesting in the beginning. You said you're in business for 7 years, and you haven't been profitable. And this is something like a SaaS issue all across, right? Salesforce has only been profitable at 13 out of 14 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of other big name SaaS companies have the same issue. However, with stock and all this other stuff, it incentivizes you to continue. What is going to make that trend to make these really like long-term 100-year businesses, 50-year businesses, 30-year businesses if we don't continue to see profit, but are still spending money on improving the product, what's the solution?
So if I understand the question, it's how do we see change? How do we see a quicker ramp to profitability?
Well, I mean, like profitability is an issue whether you're a 7-year company, 15-year company,
Yeah.
or a SaaS model, because you're going, like SAP sells you something for $6 million, and
Yeah.
then Xero comes in and sells you the same FI solution for $200,000. For you to get to $6 million, it's going to take a lot longer. While
Yeah.
SAP, after 3 years, comes back, sells another $6 million solution, and you come back at $200,000. How do you compete with that?
I mean, there's a I don't know how to define. There's a lot in that question. It's basically how do you run your business, I think. So we do a lot of things.
Great job.
Yeah. So just so you know, we do sell accounting software. We're not like SAP. We're $29 a month, unlimited users. We're a QuickBooks replacement. So we're going for the long tail, large customer base. We think there's a global opportunity. There's 550 million businesses across the globe, and there's no major player that's taken over the accounting software market. There's major players in the US, and there's major players in Australia and New Zealand. There's some in the UK and the mainland, but there's no global player. The online changes that. So when you're on the web,
I love Xero.
yeah. Oh, that's good. Testimonial, great.
Yeah, no, you guys are awesome. I just wonder, like in SaaS in general, since it's unsexy and B2B, how do we get companies like yours and other SaaS companies to profitability? And is that even realistic?
Yeah. I honestly, it's a really long answer to that question. I can talk to you about how what we look at, but we're not even looking at profitability right now. I mean, we're profitable if you break down some of our regions, yes, and we figured out that the model that works there. But even this next year we're going to lose more money than we made. So we forecasted that. But we're invested for growth, and that's the tack that we're taking. Doesn't sound, profitability is one of those things you want to get to. But right now, it's just about customer acquisition for us. All right, thank you.